of fact, the ambassador, who was a special envoy, shows up in Israel to reinforce and to inform them. They went through all this trouble to say, you know what? You Jews don't have a right to do that. Even though it's their city. That'd be like somebody coming to you and saying, you don't have a right to build, in Sonora anymore. That'd be somebody, let's say somebody in Africa comes and says, you don't have a right to build in Sonora. You can't build any houses, anything, Of course, they went on to say in this official statement from the government that what they want to encourage is that Israel join with the Palestinians and produce a two-state solution. That's his phrase that you're going to hear so much about. Well, of course, then, the next month, and we're talking about this year, in February the 8th, once again, Japan welcomes the measures by Israel about the West Bank, and they're telling them about, all this stuff. Then we get to February the 10th, and then we have a new statement coming from Japan. Japan does not recognize any fact that anticipates the final status of the territories in the pre-67 borders for Israel's annexation of East Jerusalem. So what do they find out? They make these two statements. I know this is kind of boring, but it's going to get real good in a second, so stick with me. The government of Japan is concerned about Jerusalem building and etc., and they will not recognize that. And the government of Japan is now urging Israel to refrain from doing this kind of stuff. Well, of course, that was February the 10th. And then on February the 28th, then they really started showing their true colors. Because then they made it very clear who they were in support to. And that is the Palestinian Authority. They ended up signing a $32.5 million agreement with the Palestinians, which ends up being, since the establishment of the Palestinian Authority, now listen to this number, $1.1 billion that Japan gave to the Palestinians to allow them and to support them in taking over Jerusalem. Now let me just tell you something. They were being warned, don't do that. Don't do that. Now that was February the 28th. Of course, the spokesman for the Palestinian Authority, the Prime Minister, said that, he says, I single out the interest of the Japanese government in executing projects in Jericho and the Jordan Valley, where it implemented projects totaling $40 million, and he talked about how great the Japanese were, is that they're helping us Palestinians to be able to do it. What's amazing, though, is he went on to say that we count on the implementation of more initiatives and projects for our people, as he's bragging about how great these people are. Now, after making it very clear that Japan was against Israel having Jerusalem, and making it very clear by spending $1.1 billion in support of the Palestinians to take over Jerusalem, the next month, the world saw something that it needed to think about, and that is on March the 11th. If you remember, I told you to remember the date. March the 11th, of prior year, the exact same day, was that when they started making Israel say, you don't have a right to do all this stuff, the earthquake struck, the 9.0 earthquake. It was so powerful that it moved Japan's land 8 feet. You want to give away land? God said, I'll give away some land. Now, it's interesting because the death toll is now a minimum of 15,000. They said there's probably another additional 10,000 that still have not been accounted for. $309 billion in damages. Now, if you think that's a coincidence, it just so happens that that happened after they did it on that exact same day. That's just a coincidence. Well, let me just tell you, by the time we get done with this tonight, you're going to see that God is not afraid to say stuff like this. I'm going to cut you in pieces even though the whole world comes against this country. God says, there's one thing you don't touch, and that's the apple of my eye. When you touch that apple of my eye, you are touching a very sensitive part to me. The reason why is because God made a covenant. And it all starts back in the very first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis, in which the Lord said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country. He was in Iraq. He says, and I want you to leave from your kindred and from your father's house unto a what? A land that I will show thee. I will make thee, I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee. Now watch this. How many will think, well, yeah, God's a blesser. But that's not the only side. There's another side. Listen, there's another side of this coin. If God is a blesser, everybody loves that, but he hasn't even taken a breath. He says, and curse him that curses thee. Now all you got to do is get your little Strong's Concordance out or your little Hebrew help and look up the word curse there, and it literally means I will bring divine punishment upon him that curses thee. I will bring divine punishment. And in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Now let me just say, unlike the Quran, which commands Muslims to force the entire planet to submit to the control of Islam, that's what Islam means, it means submission. The Jewish Torah promises the children of Israel a modest and reasonable share of the land. Israel is a tiny nation encircled by their enemies. You can see the little red there, that's Israel. It's surrounded by 22 hostile Arab Islamic dictatorships, which is 640 times her size, 60 times her population, and it has all the oil. So why do these people want this little tiny speck? Okay? I mean, when you think about it, it's twice the size of the United States. You put two United States end on end, that's the size of these Arab countries. And the land of Israel is smaller than the state of New Jersey. And yet, Arabs want Israel to give up land. Does that sound a little weird to you? So why do the Arabs, propagandists, organization, are always calling Israel the expansionists? Think about it. And what it is, it's just a stinking lie is all it is. Israel actually only occupies 1/6 of 1% of the Arab land. And we're talking a minuscule amount of property. It's crazy. I mean, it's just, you can literally drive all over Israel in a day, several times. But even that is too much to the Arabs. Why is Israel to blame for the political resentment of 22 Arab countries, all of whom are dedicated to the total annihilation of Israel? And how can the 13 million Jews in the world be blamed for the problems of the 320 million Arabs who have brotherly ties to 1.4 billion Muslims worldwide? Well, the reason is very simple, saints. I want you to look up here. They deny Israel has the right to exist. And see, this is where there's a fight. Because whether people understand it or not, it is so clearly a fight that is on a spiritual level. It's undeniable. You know, remember the scripture says that we're not fighting flesh and blood against spiritual principalities and powers and all that kind of stuff. See, no matter how many land concessions that the Israelis make, it will never be enough for the Arabs, because it's not about the land, folks. It's about God. And this is where you need to understand where we're going with this tonight. God made a covenant with Abraham over the land. And if the devil can prove God is a liar, can't keep his promises, etc., then he's made his point, thereby proving God to be invalid. Now, why this is so important